everyone, my name is Emma, this is Emma Rosen Books, and I've been thinking a bit about the kind of books that I like and about, you know, if somebody said to me, what do you read, about the answer I'd give to that, which has really changed. So I thought it'd be interesting to make a video and see if other booktubers, other book fans feel the same. Please do excuse during this video if you can hear banging about or music at all. I've got a plasterer working on our extension, which I think I might start putting on my Instagram stories some updates of how that room's coming along. It's starting to look like a room. But anyway, he's gone for lunch, so I'm trying to grab a few minutes, but I don't know if he'll come back. And you know, but I think he's left his radio on. I'm kind of hiding. So sorry if you can hear any of that. Anyway, books. So when I did my BookTube newbie tag, I said that I liked certain books, which I still like. In fact, I'm going to insert the footage here of what I said.
10 what kind of books do I like to read? All sorts. Like, really, I have such a diverse interest in books. Particularly, I like non-fiction books to do with parenting and breastfeeding. I like books about the ocean. I like fantasy and sci-fi. I think fantasy and sci-fi actually are things that I read a lot in the past, and I like to read them occasionally now, but it's maybe not what I'm totally into. I like the odd thriller if it's well written. I like historical fiction about particular periods in history that I'm interested in, so Tudors, the French Revolution. I like fairy tales. I occasionally like a little bit of YA. I don't read lots of it, but occasionally, really, if it's writing on a page, I'll give it a go. I think I can appreciate an interesting idea or a well-written book in lots of different forms, and sometimes I like books that are realistic and where you can read it and think, oh my god, that could actually happen. Other times I like to read something that's really imaginative, so like a fantasy book. It depends what mood I'm in, but yeah, I read all sorts.
That footage is so lovely. I need to go back to that beach to film, but it's been so, I feel like every day that I need to film it's really windy. It's windy today, so why is it so windy at the moment? But I must get back onto some beaches and pretty areas. Anyway, because that was my unique thing that I was going to bring to BookTube, which I have a little bit, but not as much as I would have liked. Anyway, so I talked in that about genres that I enjoyed, and I do still enjoy those. Those still are the kind of books that I'd like, but I think, so when I started doing BookTube and when I got into tracking the books I read through Goodreads and in my bullet journal, and also I was a member of a book club which sadly has come to a close now. I might join a new book club or I might not, I don't know. But kind of actually being a bit more conscious of the books that I read rather than just grabbing something off the bookshelf or grabbing something out the library or whatever, you know, because I'm actually thinking about what I choose. I think that that's made a real difference. So pre all of this, I would have spent quite a lot of time just rereading things that I'd already read, particularly with the sci-fi and fantasy type stuff. They were the kind of things I just read over and over again, and historical fiction. And I tended to read, like, I might pick things up in charity shops quite a lot, but those were often classics, and I read quite a lot of classics actually. Well, I say a lot. I've read some, and yeah, I think I read books I'd heard of, I think is what I'd say, and so that was often a lot older books, and books within genres that I'd read a bit around, if that makes sense. So the first thing is, when I joined the book club that I was in, I think I've been in that book club for maybe like 3 or 4 years, they generally chose thrillers, which is not a genre that I would ever read really, and I really enjoyed some of those books, and that was the lovely thing actually about being in a book club, was having books chosen that I wouldn't normally pick, and just giving something a go. And yeah, I really loved that, and I got to read some fantastic books. I mean, I discovered Claire Mackintosh. I really like her writing for sort of crime thrillers. I read Room with them, which is one of the best books I've ever read, to be honest. I don't know, just some really, really great books that, as I say, I wouldn't have picked up or heard of, or, you know, so I kind of learnt a bit more to take a chance. Then through Bookstagram and BookTube, you know, obviously I watch videos of other people talking about books. I have a little bit more idea of what's coming out, what people are reading. just like what books have got a bit of a buzz about them. So I've heard about books that are like written in the last, I don't know, 20 years. But equally, taking part in those communities has made me try and think about what I want to read. So I'm not just going to reread the same stuff. I'm going to try and find new books or interesting books, or I don't know. But it's not just that. There is an element of what do I fancy, because I'm not just going to read something for the sake of it, but there is more conscious thought. Now, here's the thing. What I found, firstly, I'm pretty sure I'm reading more as a result of all of this. I wasn't tracking it before, so I've got no idea. I would have gone through phases where I read a lot and then other times where I read nothing for a few months, because if I was really busy I just wouldn't pick a book up. Whereas now I'm consistently reading. Even if I only read like 2 books a month, I still kind of constantly read, because I know that I'm going to be talking about it and I'm going to be posting about it on Instagram, and you know, and being a writer as well, I know that I need to read in order to get ideas on storytelling and writing styles and all of that. So because of that, I'm reading more, and I'm reading books that I wouldn't have ordinarily read before. I think that I'm starting to realise that I'm not necessarily into the genres that I was before. Now, I do still like them. For instance, I made a video about Terry Pratchett. I love Terry Pratchett. He's one of my favourite writers, but it's something that I find comforting to reread his books. But you know, I'm not constantly doing that. I'm not constantly rereading the same books, and like others that I enjoyed. The plaster is coming back. We'll see how noisy he is. I have to keep my voice down a bit, or I think I'm weird. So now that I'm reading more, what I'm discovering is that yes, I still enjoy those genres that I did before. I still like fantasy. I still like the writers that I enjoyed before. I still love Terry Pratchett's books. I still love the Dark Elf trilogy by R.A. Salvatore. I still love like Douglas Adams, and you know, I still like those books, and I still love historical fiction. I love Jean Plady's books so much. And non-fiction, I mean, I practically read the entirety of Pinter and Martin's catalogue of like parenting and breastfeeding and all of those kind of books. You know, I still love all the non-fiction sea stuff and all the science stuff. And I mean, you'll see in the things that I've read, there's always a few of those kind of books through it. But I also, in the time since I've been part of BookTube and Bookstagram and all of that, which is like a year and a half, I've read, like I said, thrillers. I've read the odd book that's like women's fiction. I've read, see, this is the thing, I don't even know. I've read like contemporary fiction. I've read like books, loads of books, I don't know. And what I've discovered is sometimes I'll pick up a book because it fits into one of those genres that I liked before. I haven't actually read much, if any, fantasy, to be fair. Other than The Mermaid by Christina Henry, is that right? I suppose that's fantasy. But yeah, I haven't really read any of that, but you know, I've read some historical stuff and I've read some sciencey stuff, and you know, but what I've found is that it's not actually really about genre at all. What I like is books that explore human relationships, I think. I think that's one of the main things that I like. And I think that the reason that I like fantasy in that is because if you take away the realism, then it does concentrate on those kind of interactions and feelings in a way, and human nature and that kind of thing. I think I like that in a book. And I like emotion. I actually really quite like quite sad, dramatic books, but they're not too sad. And this is another thing I'm discovering. So like, I like emotional because it will pull me in and I'll really read it fast, but not too much because then it's a bit over the top. I don't know. And I like books that are informative but not too heavy, because then I get a bit bored. So, you know, it's got to have information but not too much. I like to learn, but I don't want to learn too much. And that's true of fiction and non-fiction. And like, I really enjoy books that are clever and make you think. Like I said, you know, you're reading a fiction book and you're learning something, or it's thought-provoking, but not too much as to be pretentious, because if it's pretentious then it annoys me. And it's like, there's this fine line of book. I mean, I'll read anything. That's still true from my BookTube newbie. I will read anything. But in terms of books that I'm really into and that I read quickly and really enjoy, there's like this fine line that I can't define. I can't say, oh yeah, anything fantasy I love, or all feminist literature I love it, or I mean obviously nobody would say that. You know, if you're into feminist literature you're not going to love everything, you're just going to like bits of it anyway. And I think that's the thing, is that since joining Bookstagram and BookTube and all of that bookish community, is that I would no longer define what I read by genre and say, you know, oh, I read YA, or I read, you know, I would define it by more about the content of the book. Like I said, that it's about, I want to learn something, I want it to be about interactions and emotions, and that's what I'm into. Those things put together. Sorry. And sure, the things that I'm into, like parenting, like the sea, you know, if those things are in it, then all to the good. And if I'm learning more about those, because those are areas that I'm interested in, fantastic. Or particular periods of history that I'm interested in. But they don't have to be. It can be new stuff, and I'm still going to be into it if it's something that's going to get me emotionally drawn into it, and that I am sort of intellectually into it. And I find that really interesting, that, as I say, by reading more and reading like a massive variety and forcing myself to read more books, that I would no longer say that I read a particular genre, really. I just like to read books that are interesting and thought-provoking. And interestingly, Charlie Heathcote did the small BookTube tag recently, and he said, oh, I'll read anything that's not boring, and that's basically what it comes down to. And I think that's the thing, as a book lover, it no longer comes down to where I read a particular category, it's just I want to read something that's not boring. And for me, for it not to be boring, those are the things that it's got to include. I'd be really interested in what you think. Has kind of being in a bookish community in any way, whether it's that you're in a book club, or whether you do Bookstagram or BookTube, or being a writer as well, I think changes it, because now I'm very into storytelling. How did they craft that story, and how did the story develop? That's also something that I really look more for in books than I ever did before. So by being in bookish communities, does that change how you think about books, or how you read books, and what you enjoy, and in what way? I just think that that's really interesting. I don't know. So I'd love to know what you think. Please leave it down in the comments, and please like this video if you did, and please subscribe for more videos about reading and about writing. I'll see you all soon. Take care.